Remember when we all decided to get matching Hasbro tattoos on our hairy chests? Remember when you essentially threw your child out of his crib just to keep your Galactus HasLab figure safe? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to denounce Hasbro. Actually, you know what? Put your child back into his crib, take that Galactus, and I'm totally kidding. It's not that heinous. It's not that ridiculous. I mean, you probably should put your child back into his crib, but it's not time to lose our cool with Hasbro just yet. I mean, look, every company has their ups and downs, and Hasbro does have some misses, but for the most part, they've been doing a decent job. And so this particular video isn't here just to bash Hasbro. It's kind of me just venting, thinking out loud, because as I said, they've been doing a decent job. There have been some solid waves, very deep cuts, action figures and characters that people have been waiting on for decades, and they're finally getting them in plastic form, or in other cases they may have already released them, but you know, it was like 30-40 years ago and they had like 4 points of articulation. It was absolutely insane. They're starting to bring back a lot of those retro figures, a lot of Toy Biz stuff, so on and so forth. And so for the most part, they've been doing not an excellent job. They still have some slip ups, but at least a solid, decent job overall. There's not much to criticize, but in today's video, I kind of wanted to think out loud, vent a little bit to you guys, because I feel like these store exclusive Marvel Legends are getting a little bit too out of hand. And I completely understand the concept of store exclusives, and they will happen from time to time. We're starting to see it way more with the Black Series line. I'm not sure why. They probably don't want to massively overproduce these, and not every single OM wants them at this point. It seems like they're going to try to cut down on how many they're manufacturing, and that's pretty apparent with the fact that a lot of their figures are exclusive to one particular store. And Hasbro has done this from time to time with their Marvel Legends line, but for some reason I feel like they've been doing it inadequately, or at least they're not making the correct characters store exclusives. And I'll give you guys some clear-cut examples of the more recent store exclusive action figures. We just got that Target exclusive Marvel Legends Carnage figure, and it sold out incredibly quickly. I think I checked on it maybe like 40 minutes after the pre-order window opened. I wasn't at my computer, but by the time I got there, it had completely sold out. So that's a perfect prime example of an action figure selling out. By the way, a very popular character. Everybody's familiar with Carnage. He's been thrust to the forefront. He just had his first live action appearance, and in comic books, I haven't really kept too much up to date recently, but I remember a couple of years ago with the whole Absolute Carnage line, he was very, very big. Eventually we got the introduction to Null and a lot of other big villains, but for the most part, it was geared around, or it was built around Carnage and how he was slowly becoming like the biggest Marvel villain, at least in the comic book universe. So I was just absolutely baffled when Hasbro decided to make this a Target exclusive. It makes no sense, at least in my mind. This seems like a perfect figure to be a mainline release. He has not only become a central character in the Marvel universe as a whole, but is also a villain to both of the bigger Marvel characters right now, and that is Spider-Man and Venom. I suppose the only real reason for having him be a Target exclusive is because maybe they felt like they weren't going to sell enough of these. On top of that, this is a lot of reuse from older body molds, so maybe that's why they felt hesitant to make this figure widely available. And just in case you guys are wondering how much this figure is already reselling for, and I know this is technically still in the pre-order phase, we haven't even received any in person, and I don't believe that these are shipping out anytime soon, but they are already going upwards of $70 to $80. That should tell Hasbro, and it definitely tells me, that there's a demand, that there's a want for these figures. And it's crazy to think that they decide to mass produce others while this figure gets a very limited release. And we don't even have to go that far back to see another prime example of this. There was that Marvel Legends Hasbro Pulse exclusive Venom, which also came on that beautiful retro card back. And that particular figure, last I checked, the original one, obviously still with the shipper box, is going for roughly anywhere from like $140 to about $160. Now granted, that figure is a little bit older, and as time goes by, as more people open their figures, the scarcity obviously goes up. but still, it's a prime reminder of Hasbro making more questionable decisions when it comes down to what characters are going to be store exclusives and which ones are not. And if you're a glutton for punishment and you love pouring salt on wounds, well then let's do it one more time. Another great example of this was that cell shaded Walmart exclusive Spider-Man on that now infamous retro card. Now if I remember correctly, that cell shaded Venom is a slightly older figure, at least the release date is. The Spider-Man is much newer and it does have a much more limited fan base. I don't think that many people were interested in this particular figure. Not everybody loved that cell shading. Some people prefer a more classic color tone, a more classic version, and so the figure definitely did not gain as much traction as some of the other examples that we're going to mention. But even this figure out on the third-party marketplace is still going strong for anywhere from like $60 to $50, which is almost twice what the figure originally retailed for. The GameStop exclusive Gamerverse Spider-Man was also a perfect example. I remember this figure being as high as like 100 to 120 online, and I suppose maybe the source material kind of steered them in that direction just because they felt like not everybody was a gamer. The demand for this particular Spider-Man would be incredibly low. But then we have the complete opposite. For example, we had the Toad Marvel Legends action figure not too long ago, and I believe that was like a deluxe price point. If I'm not mistaken, that was about like $35. And we have seen this figure drop astronomically from time to time for as low as like $14 to $15. And I know this character has a little bit of a cult following and there are people that are going to defend this figure or the character, but honestly guys, the dude is essentially a toad or a frog. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's a very obscure character and it didn't necessarily deserve a wide release. This could have easily been a store exclusive. I also can't even begin to tell you how many times I saw that 2-pack Queen Scroll and Super Scroll on sale, and I'm not just talking about like 50 to 60% off. I'm talking about this 2-pack going for as low as like $10 to $12. Not only did I witness this in person at multiple different Targets, but I also saw just an insane amount of people posting about it on social media and different collector groups. I know this one has a slightly bigger fan base than maybe the Toad action figure, but still, it was a very small fan base that was interested in this, and it was actually a 2-pack that sat on shelves for an extended period of time. And I totally get that there was a time and a place where people actually thought this was going to be a really big storyline, the whole Secret Invasion, the Skrulls taking over. But even at its peak, there were not that many people that were hardcore Skrull fans. Not to mention, this is based on the comic book series and not anything having to do with live action projects. So it was just another one of those Marvel Legends that seemed like it would have been a perfect opportunity for a store exclusive. And honestly, I could do this all day. I could name random obscure characters that really don't make sense as a wider release. Remember the Leader action figure or Rage? How about Sleepwalker or the Marvel Legends arcade action figure? Do you remember any of these? Even if you are a fan of any of these characters, they're definitely forgettable, and most of these ended up going on sale or clearance. I do remember picking up at least a handful of Marvel Legends this year for well under $5. And if I remember correctly, every single one of those was essentially a lesser known comic book character. The bulk of my argument is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I just don't understand why all of these bigger companies that have a crazy amount of resources can't quite figure out what characters to make store exclusives and which ones to have a ridiculous amount available. And it just doesn't seem like they have the correct formula at this point. You have a lot of big characters getting store exclusive action figures like Spider-Man, like Venom, Carnage. We have even seen Hulk be a fan channel exclusive from time to time. If I remember correctly, that red Marvel Legends Hulk is or was a Target exclusive. So honestly, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but this is a common theme through a lot of manufacturers. McFarlane has had the same issue, Hasbro, so on and so forth. It's just a really interesting conversation to have. And like I said, it wasn't the biggest issue in the world. It was just a really quick observation on my end. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and definitely stay tuned. We've been uploading more consistently. I would say like maybe 3 to 4 videos on a weekly basis. So if you guys like this type of rambling content, definitely stay tuned, because we will be keeping that consistency going at least for the foreseeable future. So stay safe out there, enjoy the hobby, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.